For over 9,000 cycles, the Galactic Empire knew no equal. Its dominance stretched across more than 300 systems, enforced not through justice or prosperity, but through fear, refined, deliberate, and systematic. The High Conclave governed from the obsidian spires of Kirith Prime, each member born into power, bred to command, and trained in the ancient doctrine. Fear was control, and control was survival. They didn't waste resources on conquest for its own sake. They calculated, infiltrated, coerced. When diplomacy failed, they acted swiftly. A planet that resisted became an example. Gravity well generators cracked continents. Psychic dissonance emitters drove entire populations into madness. Sometimes they simply erased a species, vaporizing all evidence of its existence in a silent flash. Their strength wasn't an overwhelming force. It was in convincing every sentient being that resistance was not only futile but suicidal. Entire sectors had rebelled in the past. All failed. The Kirillin uprising was crushed when their oceans were transmuted into metallic sludge. The Vexari insurgency saw its stars collapse in sequence, a demonstration orchestrated for maximum psychological impact. The Empire didn't always kill, but it never forgave, and its memory was flawless. For 1,000 generations, children across the stars were taught obedience through tales of those who dared defy the High Conclave. The message was consistent: fear the Empire, or become forgotten by it. Then came Sol. It began, like many discoveries, with a probe. The scout vessel Nitherfell entered the Orion Fringe to survey unclaimed sectors. It was routine. Low-priority scans, no expectation of significant life. Just another corner to catalog before expanding dominion. The probe cataloged System 8812A, a yellow main sequence star, several planets, one of which, designated 8812A3, showed unusually high radio traffic, dense electromagnetic noise, and carbon-rich surface signatures. Closer scans revealed orbital debris, synthetic satellites, and structured heat signatures. Primitive spaceflight confirmed. Surface temperatures, tectonic activity, and biological volatility were all within range. A standard analysis returned the classification, Category Red 3, a death world. The Empire had documented many death worlds. Most were avoided. They bred unstable species, violent, ungovernable, too erratic for assimilation. But 8812A3 was different. Its native species had reached the edge of deep space travel without external assistance. They had fractured governance, but high adaptability. They were pre-warp, but had weapons capable of extinguishing all life on their own planet multiple times over. The Empire's biointelligence noted behavioral anomalies. Despite millennia of conflict, these beings were not extinct. They survived self-destruction. Worse, they thrived on it. This contradiction caught the attention of Conclave member Zarinvel. It was deemed an opportunity. A quick infiltration and study mission was authorized. Nothing aggressive, just a containment pod and a small detachment of retrieval drones. The target was a research installation in a remote Arctic region. Human subjects would be extracted, tested, then discarded. Their culture would be analyzed, and their planetary communications mapped. If the species showed potential for servitude or controlled integration, they would be harvested. If not, sterilization protocols would be initiated. The pod landed undetected. 3 humans were taken. No military personnel, just civilians. A biologist, a communications engineer, and a technician. They were placed in separate containment fields aboard Observation Station 14 Beta, orbiting above Gliese 442. Standard procedure: sedate, isolate, examine. 4 hours later, all life signs aboard 14 Beta ceased transmission. The Empire assumed mechanical failure. It dispatched a recovery team. What they found was not mechanical failure. The observation bay was charred, walls gouged, Internal security logs showed partial footage. The technician, unarmed, had disassembled his restraints using a fragment of the bed frame, inserted it into a maintenance seam, shorted the field circuit, and escaped. He used a food tray as a makeshift blade, and with surgical precision, severed a drone's optic feed. He then used its chassis as a bludgeon. The biologist had created an improvised chemical reaction using enzyme samples, generating enough force to breach a secondary barrier. The engineer somehow rerouted an internal comms line to overload a power node. 3 unarmed humans, confined, sedated, in an alien environment, overcame a fully automated detention facility within 90 minutes of regaining consciousness. They didn't just escape. They dismantled the station's critical systems. They executed 2 drone operators and left the rest to suffocate as they vented the compartmentalized oxygen reserves. Before the final blackout, one drone recorded a transmission left on a wall console. "You shouldn't have come." The footage was analyzed by 23 members of the High Conclave. The behavior was assessed, dissected, debated. Some argued it was statistical anomaly. Others saw it as proof. Deathworlders could not be contained. Zareen Vell disagreed. She believed they could be broken. A larger force was dispatched. This time, a carrier, 100 troops. Their goal: secure more specimens and begin planetary intimidation operations. No overt attacks, just a presence, subtle infiltration, perhaps a minor atmospheric manipulation to provoke surrender. The carrier never made it back. It entered the Sol system and vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone. It stopped transmitting at the edge of the asteroid belt. The last visual was static interspersed with audio fragments, distorted but unmistakable. Human voices, laughter, no known military engagement, no distress signal. The ship was gone. Panic didn't set in. Not yet. The Empire had lost ships before to anomalies, but something was different this time. The ship's black box transmitted one final burst before silence. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't coordinates. It was one phrase, translated from the Terran tongue. "Don't escalate." The message was received, interpreted, and dismissed. Arrogance had calcified within the Empire's core. The notion that an unaligned species could defy them, laughably absurd. Another fleet was assembled, this time 5 destroyers. They were ordered to surround the planet and initiate orbital lockdown. No planetary bombardments. No risks, just overwhelming presence. Within 11 minutes of arrival, the destroyers began transmitting strange anomalies, time code discrepancies, signal distortions. By the 15th minute, all 5 vessels lost guidance control. Sensors reported phantom contacts, bogies appearing, vanishing, then reappearing inside their hulls. Hull breaches began without physical impacts. At minute 17, an encrypted message burst across open space. "You escalate. We reciprocate." Then silence. Of the 5 destroyers, only one remained physically intact. It drifted into the lunar shadow and remained motionless. When the Empire's salvage team finally approached, they found every crew member dead. Not from violence, but from suffocation. Life support systems had been reprogrammed. Not shut down. Reprogrammed. Rewritten using Earth-native code inserted through auxiliary ports that were supposedly sealed. The silence that followed the Empire's retreat from Sol was not peace. It was paralysis. The High Conclave, once masters of galactic perception, found itself unable to shape a narrative that made sense of what had occurred. For the first time in recorded Imperial history, a species had neither begged for mercy nor attempted negotiation. Humanity had not declared war, issued demands, or engaged in diplomacy. They had simply reacted intelligently, efficiently, without hesitation, and without warning. The Empire's scientists tried to rationalize it. Perhaps a rogue AI, perhaps evolutionary fluke? They submitted report after report filled with probabilities and psychological assessments, all flawed by a single blind spot. They still saw humans as primitives operating in the early stage of interstellar evolution. But primitives did not rewrite AI behavioral matrices across light years. They did not encode psionic echoes into gravitational anomalies. They did not make empires step backward. And yet, humans had done all these things. Empirical confidence collapsed under layers of uncertainty. The usual tools failed. Surveillance probes stopped transmitting upon entering Sol's heliosphere. Drones rebooted with corrupted firmware. Remote psychics tasked with projecting into the system returned either brain-dead or violently insane, screaming about impossible geometries and recursive consciousness loops. The conclave ordered more tests. The result was consistent. The deeper they probed, the more they lost. It was not technological supremacy that terrified them. It was the implication of intent. Humanity was not reacting out of fear. They were demonstrating capacity, holding a mirror to the Empire's tactics, but wielding them in ways that made the original authors seem like children. Where the Empire had relied on overwhelming presence, humanity employed surgical disruption. Where the Empire used mass punishment to instill terror, humanity used precision to inject doubt. And doubt spread faster than any weapon. Sectors began to question the infallibility of imperial control. In distant systems, broadcast signals emerged from nowhere. Quotes in archaic human dialects, references to strategy games, ancient Terran poetry distorted into cryptographic riddles. Entire starports shut down after experiencing what came to be called linguistic hijacking, where written language was replaced system-wide, with encoded messages that self-replicated faster than firewalls could block them. A single sentence appeared across 13 worlds simultaneously, in hundreds of native languages. You still think this is about war. The conclave grew restless. Zareenvel, once the voice of aggressive exploration, now sat in silence. Her recommendation contained Earth had backfired so catastrophically that even her allies distanced themselves. Yet none dared to act against her. The humans had targeted her station first, and she was the only one still alive from that original mission chain. That made her a warning, or perhaps a message, but no one knew to whom. Tensions rose. Border colonies near Sol began defecting. Some declared neutrality. Others severed ties altogether, adopting strange customs inspired by intercepted Terran broadcasts. One mining colony began wearing pressurized armor styled after ancient Terran warrior garb. Another converted its central node into something they called a server shrine, devoted entirely to preserving human memes. Analysts were baffled. What began as resistance turned into something worse. Admiration. The fear the Empire had weaponized for millennia was being replaced, not by peace, not by rebellion, but by fascination. The Empire struck back, but only where it was safe, on the fringes, against its own worlds. It needed to reestablish control, show dominance. The Scorch campaign on the Okran moons was brutal. Every broadcast station looped the footage of vaporized cities and weeping refugees. The conclave expected compliance. Instead, a response came through a signal beacon on the third moon of Okran Beta. 3 words: "You are predictable," followed by a precise injection into their central data lattice. A rewritten code loop that converted half of the Empire's most secure encryption algorithms into child's puzzles. The cost was incalculable. Every classified communication had to be rerouted. Security protocols collapsed. The Empire's strength, the image of omniscient awareness, cracked in full public view. That's when the disappearances began. Empire dignitaries, advisors, operatives, high-ranking protected, vanished. Not killed, not assassinated, erased. Their logs were wiped, their transmissions redirected, their biometric identities overwritten in real time. Their own families received messages in their voices saying they had chosen exile. No bodies were ever recovered. The conclave tried to suppress the truth, but the disappearances weren't isolated. They were patterned. Human analysts, if anyone could call them that, were selecting targets with surgical intent. Individuals responsible for atrocities were the first to vanish. Those involved in psychological operations, forced subjugations, and cultural eradication campaigns were next. Soon, entire departments stopped functioning. The Bureau of Thought Compliance collapsed under the weight of its own paranoia. Interrogators began refusing to work. Data engineers committed suicide after being infected with a code that simulated their victims' last memories in perfect sensory detail. They called it the empathy virus. The name was misleading. It wasn't biological. It was psychological, designed, built, and deployed with the express purpose of making the Empire feel what it had spent millennia suppressing. Its victims didn't go mad from pain. They simply remembered every cry, every plea, every life snuffed out in the name of order. It didn't just show them history. It made them experience it. And for those who had never known anything but control, it was worse than death. By now, the Empire had shifted into full defensive posture. Commanders withdrew fleets. Entire star systems were placed under martial law. Trade routes shut down. Civilian unrest escalated as more and more information leaked. The problem was no longer just Earth. It was the idea of Earth, what it represented. The Empire's propaganda corps, desperate, attempted inversion. They portrayed humans as monsters, beings of chaos, unreasoning rage, unbounded destruction. But every attempt backfired. The more they dehumanized humans, the more alien species related to them. After all, what was humanity really doing? They weren't invading. They weren't enslaving. They were retaliating. Strategically, disproportionately, yes, but with reason. They didn't hide their scars. They turned them into weapons. And that resonated. The conclave convened in emergency seclusion, their minds split between disbelief and dread. Centuries of dominance unraveled not through superior firepower, but by the collapse of perception. Humanity had not seized a single world, yet entire sectors no longer answered to the throne. The humans never needed to conquer territory. They made the Empire's core ideology obsolete. Their reports revealed a chilling trend. Contact with former loyal systems was failing, not by jamming or blockade, but disinterest. Local governors refused to acknowledge imperial commands. Entire populations ignored directives. Propaganda broadcasts were met with silence. In some cases, they were overwritten entirely by Terran signals, often cultural in nature. Ancient music, speeches, fictional dialogues with philosophical undertones. It wasn't chaos. It was erosion of identity, of obedience, of fear. A pattern emerged. Each affected region had been involved in suppression campaigns or had hosted re-education outposts. Now they were melting down from within, as if those who had once been broken were suddenly recalling forgotten truths. And somewhere behind it all, unseen and untraceable, Earth was still watching. Xenopsychological divisions collapsed under the weight of mounting contradictions. Human behavior eluded every model. No consistent doctrine, no single hierarchy. They retaliated with precision, yet allowed chaos to flourish where it served their goals. They made no claim to rule, yet wielded the influence of a god. Every attempt to provoke a traditional conflict failed. Earth had no ambassadors, no known alliances, no ultimatum, just a slow, grinding redefinition of power. When the Empire attempted to retaliate by staging a showcase of overwhelming force against a rebellious outpost, the operation backfired before deployment. The fleet never launched. Their navigation system scrambled, targeting arrays filled with static. Internal comms broadcast unreadable messages and distorted human voices, quoting from ancient Terran philosophers, that which yields is not always weak. Crew members collapsed from sensory overload. The order was canceled. Within 3 cycles, 5 major fleet marshals resigned, not in disgrace, but in quiet defeat. Their resignation cited no fear of death, only an unwillingness to fight an enemy that had already defeated their purpose. They knew any conflict would be meaningless. Their weapons were obsolete, not technologically, but philosophically. On the colony world of Girantas, a rogue scholar released a banned treatise, The Human Condition, Why Earth Cannot Be Colonized. In it, he posited that humanity's unique power came from their acceptance of pain, contradiction, and mortality. They did not strive to remove fear from society. They embraced it, mastered it, and used it. Their resilience did not stem from strength, but from the understanding that strength was often irrelevant when terror was wielded with conviction. The paper went viral. Copies appeared on systems untouched by rebellion. In controlled zones, its dissemination was punishable by death. That did not stop it. The Empire's act of suppression only fueled curiosity. Resistance cells began quoting it directly. Even loyalist forces debated its claims in private forums. For the first time, soldiers assigned to crush insurgents hesitated, not because they sympathized, but because they saw no victory in fighting shadows that held up a mirror to their empire. Internal fractures spread. Planetary governors sought greater autonomy. Supply chains broke down, not through blockade, but refusal. Dock workers simply stopped loading freighters. Mid-level officers walked away from their posts. Psychological operations teams refused new assignments. Some of the most dedicated enforcers of imperial doctrine began to question what they were upholding. The Empire's pillars weren't being knocked down. They were evaporating. Then came the shift. Humanity made its first outward move, not with weapons, but with infrastructure. A derelict trade relay in neutral space flickered back to life. Ancient human code restored it to full operation. Communications from dozens of systems rerouted through it, not intercepted, facilitated. It became a node of clarity in a galaxy of collapsing trust, a place where information flowed without censorship. No one claimed it, no one guarded it, but everyone used it. Next, a station thought lost of time, long abandoned after a mining accident, was discovered fully operational. Inside, caches of medical supplies and food appeared, tailored for non-human physiology. Instructions written in every known galactic language guided the sick and displaced. Refugees gathered. No banners were flown, but Earth's influence was unmistakable. By the time the Conclave noticed, dozens of such ghost gifts had appeared across neutral and conflict zones alike. No demands, no presence, only support. Targeted, calculated, effective. Analysts reeled. Why invest resources without seizing territory? Why offer aid without extracting loyalty? The answer came in whispers from systems that received the help. We were remembered. The Empire had made a religion of fear. Humanity countered with something older, not compassion, not altruism, recognition. They saw the forgotten. They acted where it cost them nothing, but changed everything. The Empire's cruelty was deliberate. Earth's influence was incidental, yet more potent, because it restored a dignity the Empire had long since stripped away. At the height of this ideological shift, a message appeared across every known channel. It was not from Earth, but from a coalition of alien leaders, once rivals, now united by a singular truth. Earth did not need to lead. It only needed to exist. And its existence had permanently rewritten the galactic order. The message was brief. We no longer accept fear as currency. It was a declaration of independence, not from the Empire, but from the mindset that had allowed it to thrive. And the Empire, for the first time in its immortal reign, had no response, because power without fear was hollow, and humans had proven it. Some conclave members pushed for reconciliation. Others demanded retaliation, but no consensus emerged. Each faction feared Earth in a different way. Some saw them as prophets, others as architects of chaos. Still others believed humanity was not acting as a unified force at all, but as an emergent consciousness, organic, unpredictable, a culture weaponized by exposure to extinction. The truth didn't matter anymore. Perception did. To the galaxy, Earth was inevitable, and inevitability cannot be bargained with. One final attempt at projection was made. The unveiling of the Echelon-class dreadnought, a symbol of imperial supremacy built over 2 centuries. Its unveiling was meant to reclaim the narrative, to remind the galaxy who still held the most firepower. But during the ceremony, the dreadnought's internal systems went dark. Not hacked, not disabled, rewritten. Its own AI projected an image across the starfield above the ship, an old Terran monument. A torch raised the sky. No one knew what it meant, but it felt final. The dreadnought, renamed by its own systems as Last Witness, drifted in silence for days before self-destructing. No casualties, no wreckage, just absence. That was when the Empire realized the full scope of their defeat.